Have roster changes gotten out of hand? Let me provide some context first. BDS just won Worlds. Obviously, throughout the season, they had their issues. They didn't perform in the two majors and didn't get any regional wins in Split 1. But, they came back. They won two regionals in Split 2, being the number one EU seed that major. Obviously, they didn't win that major, but they then won EWC. And even more importantly, they won the World Championship. You expect the most successful team of the season to stick together until they no longer look like they could win the next event. Winning Worlds hardly implies you can't continue winning, right? But even myself, I had that moment watching a grand final when I saw Team BDS win. I thought to myself, so who is going to get kicked / poached for next season on Team BDS? And really, that was an understandable thought considering they literally announced 2 days ago Team BDS are expected to disband heading into the RLCS 2025 season, and BDS are expected to build around Monkey Moon. Now we do also have information that Drawley is being picked up, or likely being picked up by Carmine Corp to play alongside Vatira and Atao, and Vitality are likely picking up Exotic to play alongside Zen. All these sources are from Achilles. I'll link his Twitter in the description. So yeah, and by the way, one more move like this and Exotic becomes a Rise level journeyman. He's been on every single top tier French team except for Gentlemates at this point, I think. So quite impressive. So why do players feel more than ever it's necessary to make roster switches like this? Well, let's track back to the old era. We had Cloud9 back in the day, who had the same roster for 3 years straight. During that period, winning a DreamHack, they won a Gnarly. I think they won 2 DreamHacks though. I think one of them might have been without the org, but it was the same roster at least. And obviously, a very successful team within those 3 years, considering they won the World Championship, right? So, yeah, very, 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 very impressive and a lot of longevity there. And then as well, Dignitas dominated for 3 seasons straight until that last grand final against Cloud9 that I just mentioned. Vitality, they made back-to-back grand finals at Worlds. It's just not a season, that's a whole year straight of that roster being together. And NRG, they would really only make one roster switch every year or so, and that's actually kind of the point, is now you have to, at the end of the season, you have to prepare for the next year, right? You used to have to prepare for the next 6 months. If you thought you had a roster that could win within 6 months for Worlds, you would probably stick with that roster, right? So you had more of an incentive to stick together if you won Worlds. That was the logic behind it. But players don't really want to play with a team they're not sure they're going to be able to win come Worlds with. Because yeah, that's 12 months later. That's a whole year later. So at the end of the season, you're kind of planning like, how are we gonna get to the to a position where we can win the World Championship next year? Now, constantly nowadays, players are switching teams, constantly trying to find an extra gear in whatever team they're at. And if NRG were under similar circumstances, I'd imagine they would have made more roster switches too. I'd imagine Fireburner would have been kicked off the team just that little bit sooner. No, to be fair, he didn't necessarily get kicked. He retired together with him leaving the roster, so a little bit of ambiguity in there. I'm not sure I pronounced that correctly, but whatever. Anyways, now in the open era, which is basically everything from RLCS X onwards, BDS, who had dominated for a whole year in RLCS X and won the fall major straight after that as well, they made a roster switch after one bad split. Only one bad split, and they said, yeah, okay, after that whole year and a couple months of domination, we are still happy to make a switch. And that switch made them win Worlds at the end of the season. That switch was literally the reason they came out on top at Worlds. That same BDS then, that won Worlds, had a terrible first 2 splits next season and had to pick up the pieces at the very end again with a switch. not switching earlier proved to be a mistake for them. I think they had a love for each other. I think Monkey Moon and Extra, they were great friends. So I think they kind of had a bias there as well, where they didn't really want to part ways. Obviously, that's all just assumptions and guesses, but yeah, clearly the switch that they made the season before was quite effective, and they didn't do it afterwards. Obviously, now they won Worlds. It's not the same thing as dominating RLCS. But yeah, it proved to be a mistake to not make that switch sooner. Then, last season, technically you could say it's 2 seasons ago now. We're in the off season, so a little bit awkward there. But yeah, Vitality, we all know the Vitality with Sen. They had one of, if not the most dominant Worlds performance in RLCS history. This season, they didn't win any majors. They won just one regional and couldn't even make top 8 at Worlds. Not making a switch clearly did not work out for them. So in the open era, we are 2 for 2 in terms of not making a switch after winning Worlds was proven to be a mistake, or at least it didn't work out. So conclusion then, teams are just much more incentivized to make roster switches nowadays, particularly in this case, also even right after you've won Worlds. You don't have to make a roster switch, of course, but it's never been this beneficial to do so, and that's been the reason we're seeing it so often right now, even after, you know, a team has just won the most important trophy of all. Anyways, that's gonna be it for me. Yeah, it was a pretty interesting thing I saw on Twitter. Just a bunch of drama about, you know, BDS, they're disbanding, and to be fair to them, it was a very, very tightly contested season as well. So I think at this point, more than ever, a roster switch was more predictable than any other point. Which, you know, that's why I was kind of asking myself as well, like who's gonna leave the team, who's gonna get poached, who's gonna get kicked, whilst the grand final was going on, or not really whilst it was going on, just right after it had finished. But yeah, it was a definitely interesting topic. Anyways, thank you all for watching. Feel free to discuss it in the comments. I'll reply to every one of them probably, and I'll see you later.